We can see.
Great, thanks, Megan. Just before we get into it, a few of our ground rules. We do have kind of a large group here. Just submit questions in the chat as well as after the presentation. And also just if you are open to it, turn on your video camera too for this section. And for the presentations today, we'll hear from Brian Shaw on floodproofing, Valerie Huffnagel on stormwater landscape architecture, and then Michael Deary on green roofs, or sorry, Michelle Deary, sorry, Michelle. And also I'll introduce or let Yasmin introduce herself too, who will be the facilitator for this session.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Yasmin, and I am the facilitator for the session. I am also an environmental planner and project manager with the city of Hoboken. I know some of the technical leads here on the call already from our resilient building design workshop that we had on October 13th for our Hoboken residents. So thank you everyone for joining this meeting as well. It's nice to see you all. So we'll be wrapping into this, starting with Brian Shaw with floodproofing. So I will let you speak, Brian.
Hey, thank you so much. So yeah, we are a company based out of New Jersey, and I've been with the company for about 13 years. I am the director of sales and marketing for the company, as well as a certified floodplain manager. If you can go to the next slide, please. So what I want to talk about today are those options for both residential and commercial properties to stop the flow water from getting in. Now there's a lot of different entry points where the water could get in. What these products are going to focus on are those main entry points, typically the doors, the windows, the garage doors, in addition to some perimeter solutions if you want to surround the entire property or divert the water towards the end of these slides. But we have about 13 slides to get through. So this first one is a great residential option. It is a standardized product, meaning it is off the shelf, ready to ship. And it also doesn't involve any permanent hardware. This product is called the Dam Easy Flood Barrier. Flood protection, just know it's not cheap, for the lack of a better word. These products are engineered and designed not only to keep the flow water out, but also to handle debris impact. You know, you do have possibly some floating debris and flow water, but it is not easy to keep flow water out. But this product in particular, how it works is it does expand out. So your typical single doorway, 30 inches to 43 inches wide, this will expand out. And then it has a gasket around the sides and the bottom. So once you set it to the width that you need it in your door jamb, you would inflate the seal, and that's going to create that structural element to keep it in place. And you're pretty much set to go at that point once you extend the side panels and inflate the seal. If you could go to the next slide, please. So what you're looking at on the left picture here is if you do have a larger opening that goes across, we do have extension posts where you can put these side by side together to cover, say, a set of double doors or a garage. That extension post would require one anchor in the ground, but this product, it is standardized, so it is 28 inches tall. It is going to provide 28 inches high of flood protection, but it's that great residential product. It could also be used for commercial for that lower level flooding, you know, 28 inches and under. But it's very easy to deploy, as you could see, for, you know, any really any person, any age, anyone like that. But really, you know, just pricing, this is one of the most economical versions of a flood barrier. About $900 for the single barrier, $380 per extension pole. But this is an option. Again, no permanent hardware, ready to order today, and it will keep that water out. Next slide, please. So now this is an option that is another standardized product, comes in a couple different heights, 2 foot, 4 foot, could stack them to 6 foot. And this is made for a single or double door as far as width. Now this product is probably a little bit more on the commercial side. So if you do have a commercial business, this is a product that went through the FM approval, which is the main standards and testing for flood barriers. Next slide, please. So with this type of product, and we're just giving you a visual here of some of the testing that these products go through, because you want to stand behind the products and make sure they're tested and keep that water out. So this is a testing facility with water, any amount of seepage, which is very minimal, is calculated, impact requirements. But this product, you could see it's a little more industrial. This product would anchor into the wall of a building, but it is still very quick deployment. And this is also standardized, off the shelf, ready to ship. Next slide, please. Oh, and just to hit on the cost of that previous product, that would run you about $3,000 to $4,000 for that single door opening, whether it's 2 or 4 feet high. Now, this product, what we're looking at, can be used for either commercial or residential. This is a custom flood panel. So why it's not a one size fits all is because some people have different widths depending on what you're trying to protect, right? What opening. You'll of course have different flood heights, right? Depending on the elevation of your grade versus the base flood elevation or the expected flood level. You might want a panel that's only 1 feet high or 6, 7 feet high. So this custom flood panel is very necessary depending on the heights that are required. Now, this product would also anchor into the wall. On the right side, you do see it's not some permanent, track that's always on the wall that might not be aesthetically pleasing. You're going to just have inset snake anchors at the face of the opening typically, and you would have a cap on the wall. Paint them, blend right in. But then, once you want to deploy it, you would remove that cap. You would place the panel in front of the opening, and then you would just use bolts to bolt it in. Now, the middle picture, I just want to point out, this is called gasket compression, right, for simplified terms. And it's an easy concept to understand how to keep that flow water out. You have a custom-made panel that's lightweight, that has a high-density foam core, a layer of fiberglass, and a special coating. And then you have a gasket that's compressing against the face of the building that could actually conform to uneven surfaces as well, like brick or split face block. And next slide, please.
Hello, Laura. Oh, fine. I'm supposed to have been a meeting, but it's all right though.
Just going to thank you. What's neat about this product as well is that it does have toolless deployment. So on the video on the right side, what you could see is that panel, once it's against the opening, and again, we do a lot of residential with this, whether it's a door, we could actually jam mount this as well, go across the garage. But once you have that panel up and it's lined up with the anchor, this bolt has a knob on it that you just hand tighten that knob into the pre-installed anchor, and you're just compressing that gasket against the wall and against the ground. So, what you're looking at on the left side pictures, whether it's window protection towards the bottom, or if you have a longer run, these can be connected together with a spline connection, because you do want panels that are manageable to pick up and move around, to put in storage, take out. So these pieces can be connected together, and it is a custom product. This type of product, would range about $150 to $200 per square foot of panel, because again, it could vary in width and height. Just know that with this product, custom made, it could be about a 10-week lead time just because of the approval process and manufacturing. But know that we do complimentary assessments. We go on site, we can do it through pictures, whatever's easier for you, to take a look at your building, get measurements, and get you a quick estimate, within a week, no obligation. Next slide, please. So this is an option, I'd say, more geared towards the commercial side. It is a more expensive option. You're talking about $1,000 per square foot of barrier, but did just want to let you know that this option is available. It's a passive flood barrier. Next slide, please. Really what you're looking at with this product is something that doesn't require that human intervention to go manually deploy a panel before a storm to keep that water out. Sometimes floods happen overnight. Sometimes you don't have that warning time, or could, get someone that has access to a building. So there are flood barriers out there that do work automatically. And essentially how they work is that flood water itself is collecting into a collection grate, and it does have a drain pipe. Once that drain pipe is overcome, the water itself is lifting up that barrier to provide the protection. So we see this a lot used for critical facilities, but also, commercial buildings, parking garages, really anything like that. Next slide, please. Now, when we get into perimeter protection, this could be used for a couple different ways. Some people just want to surround their home or business because, maybe the walls of the building, they realize that water gets into too many different places, or, even if I block the water from getting to an entry point, the walls won't be able to handle my 6-foot expected flood load. So I need to surround the entire building. That is possible. This could also be used to divert water if you're backed up to a river, or if you're in a urban type area where you have some directional flow happening and you just want to divert the water. But this type of product, just know that this is standardized pieces that connect together. Once you have them in place, you would fill them with water to make them structural and put a liner over top. And now you're creating a longer run flood barrier. This product is available in a couple different heights, but just think of this product if you're looking for a cost range from $100 to $200 per linear foot, depending on the height. Next slide, please. Now, this is also another custom solution for perimeter barrier, but custom because, this could be made to the height and width that's needed, but this could also anchor into a building onto a wall. So this product does not need to be filled with water. This would come out on a roll. You would lift it up and you would hold it. You'd put these upright supports, you'd connect those together, and then you have stainless steel structural cables. Essentially, instead of that gasket compression that we talked about, this, once flood water overtops that ceiling skirt, the weight of the water is actually creating that seal to stop the flow water from getting in. So this product, these are just a couple jobs we actually did on the left side in the Northeast, a bank. This is actually a Jersey City job, I believe, on the right side. Next slide, please. So this is really a video of 10-foot wide sections that come on rolls. They zipper together. And this is a home connected to a business that has flooded multiple times. And the homeowner wasn't doing it to get a reduction in insurance, wasn't doing it to meet code, but needed something, needed flood protection, was tired of having, not having that business continuity, having her business shut down every time it flooded, and her home, for the safety of her home. So this is just that visual of a true perimeter style option. The grade that this sits on could be multi different surfaces. Different seepage points are looked at and calculated. Typically with a perimeter system like this, there are flood pumps that are put on the inside that any seepage or rainwater that gets behind the barrier would be pumped right back out over top. Next slide, please. Oh, and this custom product, this will range about $200 per linear foot for a 4-foot high section, for example. Now, the last product solution that we're going to look at is just a longer run sand-filled flood fighting system. So we're not really calling this a sandbag. We know sandbags have their issues, too many seepage points. Most people don't build them in the true perimeter style, option that you need. But this is actually an Army Corps tested sand-filled system. And next slide, please. So this would be basically a trapezoid shaped, longer run sandbag without those points of entry, like those individual sandbags where flow water could just get through, right? So this is just a longer run option. We're showing more of the commercial side option where it would be filled with machinery. Just know that there is a version of this product that is, 4-foot wide by 2-foot high trapezoid shaped sandbag, for example, it's actually designed to stop flow water from getting in. So the less seams that you have in a system, the less chance of failure, right? So this is an option, much more economical as far as if you wanted to go this route. I think that might do it. Do I have a next slide? Thank you. So I'll just end with one final statement, and I do appreciate the time, but we would love the opportunity to help. Again, look at buildings on site. We're based right in New Jersey. We could also do it through pictures, but please reach out if you have any issues and you're considering protection for your building. And just know that we're not going to say this one and only product is your fit. We represent, over a dozen different solutions for the reason that it is not a one size fits all. And also, with my certified flow plan manager hat on, always looking to do the right thing for your building, always going to tell you the truth. But with that said, thank you so much.
I guess I'm up.
Is it possible we can get the information for each individual at the end of their speech, so that we have a way of contacting them directly?
Yep. We can drop it in the chat, but at the very least, we'll be posting these online afterwards, and it'll have their contact information in it.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, well, thanks so much, Brian. Yeah, Valerie, you're up.
okay, trying. So stormwater and landscape architecture. We really first started with controlling water that when you build a patio in a backyard in most of these homes, where do you put the water? Not permitted to throw it out to the sides of the neighboring property. So, we started with basically putting in on, again, these are small patios, but a standard 4-foot by 4-foot by 4-foot deep water retention tanks, dry wells. Okay, those were kind of like the standard, and that's what I've done for the last 35 years. But as this system, the problems have become larger, we're starting to build the stormwater retention tanks larger, and we're starting to take roof water from the roof, diverting it into the stormwater retention tank so that it has a place to go, and it's not going into your sewer system, which starts backing up and causes all kinds of problems on the inside. We have the next slide. Okay, so how do we manage water? Next slide, please. So this happens to be a relatively simple one. I believe it's 4-foot by 8-foot. This happens to be a project in Brooklyn, but similar situation. One of my staff in the hole measuring it to make sure we got the right dimensions. And you can see that blue tank, and the tanks come in, it just depends upon the manufacturers. There's yellow, there's green, there's blue. And we basically dig a hole and also dig a trench from where the water from the roof will be coming from. So next slide, please. We install a fabric that permits, that doesn't permit any soil from leaching into the gravel and causing a filtering problem. So this fabric, it's called a filter fabric. It runs on the bottom, and then we put anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of gravel on the bottom, and then the storm tank. And then the whole storm tank gets filled with the drainage gravel. And you can see on this site where we started to make the connections. So this was a relatively small home. I think the yard was probably about only 13 feet wide. So we did the calculations to get a larger tank, brought the water that was basically running into the neighbor's yard and to the backyard from the downspouts, and carried it into the tank. Next slide, please. So you can see where it's coming down on the left side and then basically running underground. So you're not seeing anything. On the right side, we're starting to continue to fill up the tank area with the drainage gravel. And it fills up the entire area so that it doesn't shift or move. Next slide, please. We basically, on the left side, you can see there is a fabric covering, and then we prepared a patio. And you can see this house is gray, the gray house. So there's only, it's like 12 or 13 feet wide. It's a very, very narrow yard. And then the base for the patio is installed, and you can see the pipe coming up for where there will be a drainage access point for the patio. Plus, if you ever need to get into it, it's an easy access. Next slide, please. Okay, we start to put the patio in, and you can see on the right side, the patio is complete. So that you're basically not seeing any of the tank, but it does its job. This happens to be someone that I know as a personal account, and during Ida, they received nothing coming up. So it managed the entire storm. I don't know if there's another slide. Oh, no, okay. So, you know, basically it's really simplistic, and you basically, we start with 4x4s, and depending upon the size of your yard and the size of your home, you know, normally we can go up to like 10x10. And it just, depending upon your access, and in most of these homes, it's through the house or in a small alleyway. You know, prices can start at about $2,500 for smaller tanks, and they can go up to $15,000 for larger tanks. Because when you figure how much 10 foot by 10 foot by 4 foot comes out, that's 17 yards of soil that has to come out in buckets through the house. And then about 14 yards of gravel has to be brought in. So it's basically very labor intensive, but it does work. And it helps to control the water runoff that would be normally going into your sewer line. And then the sewer line can't get out because the streets are running perpendicular, and it starts backing up and coming up into your toilets and bathtubs or anything else that's either on the first or second floor. I've seen them come in on the third floor when there's that much pressure. Generally, there's a process that we have to go through depending upon what town you're in, where we get the zoning, building permits. We have a plumber that will sign off on our permits, because technically a plumber is supposed to do the connections, but it's just, you know, he oversees everything that we do. And, you know, and the more green space that you can have, the better it is. So permeability is the biggest issue that we have today. So we don't want to put in a patio that takes up the entire yard. That's why many of the towns have enacted, you know, 50% ratios or 40% ratios, that you have to have a permeable surface. In addition to patios, you can do permeable surfaces by doing synthetic turf, real turf. In these small yards, real turf doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but artificial turf, I call it the urban lawn. It works well, and the amount of absorption of water is phenomenal. You know, planting areas, and the more we can do with trees and shrubs, the better we can breathe. So that's basically what I do.
Great, thank you, Valerie. That was really interesting. All right, so we've talked about keeping water out from some perimeter strategies, managing it in the patio, and now we'll turn to the roof. Turning over to you, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Deary, and I'm the live roof representative for New Jersey. And Valerie, thank you so much. I wanted to say that Valerie's company is a live roof certified installer. Thank you. I wanted to talk to you tonight about green roofs and their benefits. Thank you. Urban areas are covered with impervious surfaces and sidewalks, roofs, buildings, roads. It all causes more stormwater runoff. And when you have so much stormwater runoff, it causes problems with combined sewer output. And green roofs can help mitigate this problem. And green roofs can reduce the municipal processing cost, the maintenance cost, and future expansions to the system, all of which can be extremely expensive. Next slide. Green roofs are capable of reducing runoff by approximately 90%. And that depends on the size of the green roof and the pitch and such, the depth of the growing media. In general, we're talking about approximately 4 inches of soil that the green roof is growing on. And that type of green roof can reduce the amount of stormwater that's coming in at the peak flow. And it holds on to it like a sponge, delaying that flow. And green roofs improve water quality. Sometimes there's pollutants in the rain, but also in comparison to the way the water would flow off of a conventional roof and the things that it would take with it and how hot the water would become landing on that conventional roof. Whereas landing on a green roof, the water is cooler and it's filtered. Next slide. In many areas, there's just no room to infiltrate stormwater. Green roofs are the best way to retain stormwater when the urban density is so tight and there's no other space. As you can see here, this is a map showing that in this particular area, the gray area, that was the only place, well, that's the place where they recommended green roofs the most because green roofs were going to be the best way to hold the stormwater. Also, the green roofs add a lot of green to that gray area where the skyline is filled with built up structures. Next slide. So everybody knows that green roofs have a lot of benefits and people like looking at plants more than they like looking at a roof, but there are some drawbacks, and that is the cost. Sometimes people are worried that mandating green roofs in an area will deter developers. And also the immediate impact. What immediate impact can green roofs have if they're only being put on new structures and the majority of the buildings are existing? So plus people talk about a maintenance cost. So you have some deterrence on why people aren't putting green roofs on. But I think in order to make a difference, especially in the future, what we need to do is mandate green roofs. It has to become normal for all new construction, because as things turn over and as we see all of this revitalization and new development in northern New Jersey, and green roofs aren't going on every building in the future, we're just not going to make a big enough impact. And we need to make those regulations happen now. It would be nice to see at least 80% of all usable space be turned into green roof space. For example, New York City has 1 billion square feet of roof space. Imagine if all of that could be green roofs, because you're looking at approximately 1 gallon of stormwater for every square foot. That's a lot of stormwater. And then if we could really dream, let's talk about green walls too. And that would hold a significant amount also. Next slide. So the cost per square foot can be approximately $30 for materials and installation. And what we need to think about is when we weigh that cost per square foot against the flooding per gallon cost. So as you can see here, the cost really depends upon the depth. And if you have a shallower green roof, you're holding approximately 1 gallon. The deeper you get up into 8 inches to a foot, you're holding 2.4 gallons per square foot. So I think the cost is really worth it. Next slide, please. And how do you get your money back? You put this money out for the green roof and you want to see some payback. Well, Apartments with a green roof on them go for higher rents. There's savings on the longevity of the roof membrane. There's savings on energy savings, HVAC. So there is payback from the green roof itself, and of course on stormwater management fees. Next slide. So with all of the benefits that we have out there, from the stormwater management to the even the mental health benefit of being able to look out something green and growing on the roof, I would really like to see that Northern Jersey start implementing tighter, stricter stormwater management laws to make sure that we're really capturing as much stormwater as possible and mandating green roofs for new construction. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. We'll be taking questions now. So if we can just, raise your hand. There's actually a function as a reaction for raise your hand, which you can see here in the left-hand corner of my screen. So if you click on that, then I can start calling on each individual person. And then once you're done, please also lower your hand so we can move on to the next question.
Yasmin, I can't see the raise the hand function.
Oh, so if you look on the bottom of your screen next to mute, stop video, there should be a reaction button as well, and there's a raise a hand function. Yeah, so okay.
On mine there isn't. Maybe I'm on the Eventbrite side.
I see it. If you can go to more, where you see the chat. I don't know what kind of phone you're using, or if you're using your tablet, but on mine end it just says more, and that's where I can raise my hand in there. Maybe that can help.
Yeah, I'm on my municipal computer and
okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Did you have a question, Alexander?
Yeah, I had just a brief comment on all of the interventions, which I think aggregated together are really fascinating. Clearly, the green infrastructure from Huffnagel, as well as from the green roofs, the live roof stuff, speaks to the multi-hazard approach to resilience. Focusing only on flooding is a little bit myopic, although we all know that hydrometeorological risk and increasing hydrological loads in our cities are a serious problem, as well as sea level rise and coastal erosion and storm surge. But I love the fact that this round was multi-hazard. The point I wanted to make, we didn't really talk about pricing, except Brian did speak a little bit about his different interventions on the flood defense stuff. But the World Bank and the United Nations use a really interesting calculation for resilient investment, and that's this principle of approximately 1 to 7. I know econometric data that goes much higher to that. Essentially, it's something, the argument goes something like this, that for every $1 you invest in a resilient intervention, whether it's a floodgate or a stormwater capture system or some sort of a risk reduction measure, that typically equates at a minimum $7 for response, recovery, and reconstruction. Like I said, other econometric data suggests that it goes up to 10 to 1, 12 to 1, depending on the risk and depending on the event. So I thought to just make the comment for all of these interventions that if you talk about pricing, it's useful to talk about how essentially like making this intervention now. I think a lot of these products have longer life cycles, at least for several years, if not longer. you're talking about probably more like 1 to 20, 1 to 25, or even higher of life cycle risk reduction mechanisms. So I wanted to share that with everyone in that at this point, not that I work often with climate deniers, but if you run into them, I usually like to concede by saying, all right, you might not believe climate change is happening, but what you can't deny is that events are becoming increasingly more expensive and that there's a value proposition. And at this point, urban resilience is just good business, full stop. It's just good business, whether you're securing your bricks and mortar, like your physical plant of a business or a development, but also increasingly when real estate developers look at these technologies, and that's something I do with my private sector consulting firm called Resilient City. We take these technologies and position them with real estate developers, and then they integrate them, design, build, and go into cities and say, look, we're going to give you all the municipal benefits of stormwater management, or we'll give you all the regular municipal benefits, and by the way, we're going to have large-scale integrated stormwater and flood mitigation integrated into the projects. So using resilience and stormwater management as a municipal benefit. So I think I was really impressed with all the presentations, and thanks again, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? It's just hard to see you all.
I have a question. Would there be any kind of funding to help the residents as far as getting a grant with all these extra expense that they already accumulated?
Sure, that's a good question. I don't know, Mary, do you want to take that or?
Yeah, sure. And actually, I don't know if you're available to join the second session of the meeting today, because we do have another breakout that's all focused on sort of financial resources, talking about like insurance benefits as well as different programs that are available. So that could be great to join that session. We'll also, share the recordings of all of those so you can hear more about some of those programs. And, so there are some existing programs out there, and it's also something that, we're looking at through the course of this project to really, see about, what are the additional needs and what could be some future recommendations for additional programs too.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sarah Colacerdo. I'm wondering, I think it was Michelle's presentation showed a map of Hoboken from the Rebuild by Design project, and it showed an area of the city that is where a top priority is having green roofs, and then other interventions are appropriate for other parts of the city, or preferred or more encouraged in other parts of the city. And I was wondering if there's a similar type of map for the other cities in this region. I think resilience interventions, resilience measures are always kind of top of mind for businesses or residences that are close to water or have experienced flooding, in which case, the barriers that Brian presented make a lot of sense, but there's rarely recognition that folks upstream, like uphill, that they're like major players in the overall resilience of a city. And I think that a graphic like what came from Rebuild by Design can be really powerful. So, and maybe this is part of like the visioning session happening in the other breakout session, but I would just encourage that kind of visuals to communicate the types of stuff that folks can do no matter where they live in a city to help overall.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, and I was just going to add that we do have those NGDEP models that we are developing as part of the Resilient New Jersey project for all of, that would be Bayonne, Newark, Jersey City, and Hoboken. Although the rebuild by design figures that were presented here this evening, those were developed actually by a consulting team. So it would be great to have something similar, comparable for the other municipalities as well. I agree.
I just wanted to make a point, which I thought has been very interesting. The last, what Michelle had shown was the areas that are higher ground per se in Hoboken that generally have not experienced major flooding. Well, that's changed. And I'm not quite sure why. But I have 3 or 4 clients currently on the most eastern street, which would be Hudson Street, that have had significant water from Ida. And they are now looking into alternates. So it's changing. Again, I don't know why, and it's growing. But other than, it's just creeping from the west side to the east side. So no one is safe. I guess
It's tidal and intensification, Valerie.
Yeah.
Those are like some of the primary drivers that we also see in Jersey City.
Yeah.
100% agree. We're seeing parts of the city that 3 years ago wouldn't flood. It would only maybe flood 1 to 3 times a year. They're flooding 5 to 7 times a year. Places that 3 years ago were longer, sandy, that would regularly flood with much less hydrological load or much less rain volume.
Right.
Perhaps in more intense time periods. They're now flooding with less load, like with less rain volume and with higher frequency. And I think the third factor for Hoboken is that there's increased impervious surface, and what cities have not realized is that they can convert those impervious surfaces into resilient assets using different types of GI structural or combination green-gray interventions. The impervious surfaces don't need to remain a risk driver. They can be converted using the right engineering approaches and GI approaches into a resilient asset. And there are a lot of cities globally that are starting to do that, and Hoboken is one of the better cities globally. I should like to add that Hoboken is recognized by the United Nations as one of the 30 most resilient cities in the world. It is a member of what's called the Role Model City of the United Nations Making Cities Resilient campaign that was started in 2010, and former mayor Dawn Zimmer, after Hurricane Sandy, was a recognized mayor for resilience by the United Nations.
Thank you for bringing that up, Alexander. Just to add to that, in addition to our Rebuild by Design project, Hoboken is starting to take more of an approach from a policy angle, in addition to just our hard infrastructure. And so we are in the middle now of coming out with some new projects to address some of those concerns that you had mentioned. I'm not at liberty to say it just yet because it's not public. However, we are considering what you are describing. In addition to doing that, we do actually have green infrastructure elements around our city. We also have rain gardens. We also have green roofs that we've encouraged. We have over 200,000 square feet of green roofs currently on our buildings and structures in our city. And we also encourage our residents to, actually pull together rainwater using our rain collection systems that we have. And some of these are like cisterns that you can actually have on your own private residence property. And we have one at City Hall. And, you know, if you'd like to install one also on your own private property, we encourage that as well. So.
Does Hoboken have a stormwater tax or stormwater utility?
We are considering that at the moment. We do not currently have one.
Okay, yeah, same thing in Jersey City.
Yeah.
So
Is there ways of maybe offsetting taxes, offsetting utilities by promoting like green roofs or other forms of these types of interventions? So, but there was another question.
Yeah. So go ahead, Iwa.
Well, I have a question is because, you know, these are all great ideas that you guys have. But my concern is if we are having all these flooding issues in the last 9-10 years and they're getting to be more and more and more frequent, we already pay taxes as a taxpayer. And how come the cities like Bayonne, because I live in Bayonne, not helping the residents as far as building these tanks in the ground so that they can collect water or whatever not, and all that good stuff that you guys have provided today?
Yeah, I could probably answer that question a little bit, but might need some support from Mercatus. Rebuild by Design was a project that happened after Hurricane Sandy in Hoboken specifically. And so it has the 4 elements: the resist, store, delay, and discharge. And the resist are levees that we've strategically placed on the north and the south end of our city because that's where we found a lot of storm surge. Delay, store were the resiliency parks, which are, I think, what you're describing with the tanks that are under our parks, collecting stormwater because Hoboken has a combined sewer stormwater system. And we're also greatly at risk because we're 70% in the floodplain. And then we also have the discharge, which is the pumping system, which once the storm is over, we actually discharge the water back into the Hudson River. Is that what you're describing, Iwa? And why aren't you doing it in Bayonne is what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because Hurricane Sandy happened originally in Bayonne. I mean, the first time Bayonne got flooded really bad was Hurricane Sandy, which was 9 years ago. In the last 9 years, I have not seen any improvements done to the city as far as them collecting any type of water. In the last at least 2-3 years with the rains, people have gotten flooded, not as much as Hurricane Ida and as Hurricane Sandy, but still water did get in the house as far as the first floor. That was my only question is, I heard that you guys have those systems, but Bayonne seems to be a delay processing, and it's a little bit agitating and aggravating to the homeowners, especially the ones that are on low income and, you know, have other expensive and can't afford the extra expense, especially on top of you paying flood insurance and home insurance and you have a mortgage and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that too, I think, you know, what we're, you know, really the whole goal of this project is about, you know, looking at what has been successful in some areas within the region, like within Hoboken, and what are ways to, you know, expand on that in other areas within the region, like Bayonne too. And I know it looks like Sue stepped away, but she could probably speak to, you know, some of the stormwater management efforts that the city has done. I know that there is a stormwater storage project going on at, is it Fitzpatrick Park, Megan? Is that? Yeah, Fitzpatrick Park. So, you know, there has been some work ongoing in in Bayonne as well. But I definitely hear you that, you know, that more is needed. And so I think really what we're trying to do through this project is highlight that need and also look at recommendations for, you know, additional projects and additional programs to address this issue. And you know, it's not all just about, you know, we kind of like presented a lot of information here today because people often ask us about like, you know, what can I do? What are strategies that I could do on my own home? So we want to get that information out there, but also totally recognize that this isn't a solution that is just going to be addressed by homeowners doing it on their own. There needs to be additional policies put in place, additional significant federal investment, state investment, local investment at all scales. So really, we see these as all sort of like part of the solution, and great to, hear that there's desire and interest in seeing more of this.
Mary, I would just like to add to that.
Thank
I
you.
think it's not only is Bayonne, I think Bayonne has a lot of impervious surface. There's kind of a residential typography there that tends to have even like the front yard paved over with a curb cut for like a parking spot. Like there's really not a lot of like soaking up kind of surfaces in a lot of areas of Bayonne. I think that I think it really needs to be like top to bottom, like major policies and incentives in funding in Bayonne to help the homeowners to get this done. And in fact, I will just add to that. I think that from the city perspective, I think they need to take a real strong look at their development practices, because, not only has there not been a lot of progress in infiltrating the stormwater and helping with drainage issues, but left and right, there's a practice of permitting gigantic warehouses. Like we talk about like this warehouse, there's a whole warehouse program happening all over New Jersey and all over the nation. And it's a lot of it is happening in Bayonne, and I think that that those practices need to stop, or the developers need to be held more accountable to address the stormwater that they are creating on their properties.
Or there needs to be ways to incentivize retrofitting. This is an example from that I worked on a few years ago, and Bayonne's a perfect alignment example there. The city of Mississauga, Ontario, about 2 years ago, the city does have a stormwater utility, and they were essentially looking at Mississauga is sort of like the Jersey City and Bayonne of Toronto, very industrial, large big box parking lots. It's also where the Pearson Airport is located, and it's like the whole city is just one big industrial space. And what they determined was that all these industrial parks, these large parking spaces, were really nothing more than large catchments, and that they were putting a tremendous amount of strain on the stormwater management system and the combined system in Mississauga. They introduced a utility, but they gave the opportunity for owners of large impervious spaces to say, look, we're going to give you like a handbook of retrofitting. It won't cost you as much over time compared to what you pay for a utility. And a lot of them leapt up at the opportunity and introduced, some of them like made these huge industrial parks almost look like massive green parks, in part because they were incentivized to do so. So there was a bit of prodding, but there was a carrot and a stick. And it worked rather well, and the companies were very happy to do that. They were happy to avoid like long-term millions of dollars in utilities for the amount of water that they were driving into Mississauga's municipal drainage system.
You also have to understand. No, sorry, excuse me. Usually where I'm located in Bayonne is a low income for low income families, and it's on 22nd Street in Bayonne, East 22nd Street, and around us, like you said, they are building all these gigantic apartment buildings, but it's not helping the 2-family homes that are being flooded with this, because those big buildings are not getting flooded and not getting hurt. So thank you for saying that.
One of the interesting things, 99% of my work is in Hudson County. I don't do that much work in Bayonne, not for any reason, but I just don't. And I don't get that many calls. But what I found interesting, about 2.5 years ago, I did a landscaping project on a homeowner in Bayonne. And I went to pull a permit, and I was putting in a patio and planting and whatever. Every other town requires a permit for this because they want specifically to say, you know, you can only use 50 or 60% of your yard for an impervious surface or whatever. And when I went there, they're like, yeah, no, you don't need a permit. It's like, okay, that's fine. And your name is, you know, I just wanted to make sure, you know, that there's no problem. But I thought that was odd. But as I said, I don't do that much work. So maybe there's areas that, you know, Bayonne can definitely start paying attention to more that the other towns have done in the area.
Before we come to a close, I just wanted to share our post-meeting survey. We hope that you guys can fill out our survey and let us know what you thought of the meeting, what went well, what didn't go well. And then also you can provide your email address if you'd like to join the mailing list for our project. Thank you.